You've done the math. You've checked the spreadsheet, downloaded the app, set up the categories: groceries, dining, subscriptions, transport. You tracked it for 2 weeks, maybe 3. Then a car repair landed that wasn't in the plan. Or a work dinner you couldn't skip. Or just one messy week and the whole system felt broken and you stopped. And now it's a month later and your bank balance looks almost exactly the same as it did when you started. Here's what nobody told you. You were tracking the wrong number, not the wrong category, the wrong metric entirely. One number predicts your financial future more reliably than anything else. And once you see how it works, everything else clicks into place. The budget that ate your weekends. Traditional budgeting, the kind where you split your spending into 20 or 30 categories and monitor every purchase week to week, was designed for a financial environment that no longer exists for most people in their 20s and 30s. It assumes 2 things that are increasingly untrue: that you have enough margin in your income for careful category tracking to surface meaningful savings, and that you can maintain perfect execution week after week without burning out. Neither of those holds today. Decision fatigue is a real and well-documented cognitive phenomenon. Every judgment call inside a budget system: is this a dining expense or a work expense? Do I log the gas from a client visit under transport or professional costs? Depletes a finite daily pool of mental bandwidth. By the 3rd week, the system starts slipping. By the 5th, it's quietly abandoned. This is not a discipline failure. It is a design failure. There is also a structural failure mode built into every category-based budget. One bad week breaks the model. The month you had an unexpected medical bill, an event you didn't plan for, or just a run of impulsive decisions, that month invalidates the baseline you built, resets the shame counter, and reinforces the internal story that says budgeting works for other people, just not for you. That shame cycle is the most underappreciated reason budgets fail. You build the system. You violate the system. You feel guilty about violating the system. You stop using the system. A few months later, you try again, and the same loop runs. Every time through it, the belief that you're just bad with money gets a little more concrete. But the problem is not you. The problem is that you have been measuring the wrong variable. Tracking dozens of spending categories is like trying to manage a business by monitoring every individual line item in real time. It's operationally exhausting, and it doesn't actually tell you the one thing that matters. What percentage of what you earn is being converted into assets instead of spent? Everything else is noise. That number has a name, and once you understand how it works, the whole picture changes. Meet the one metric that predicts everything. The metric is called your savings rate. The formula is straightforward. Take the total amount you saved or invested in a given month, everything that went into a savings account, a retirement account, a brokerage account, or was used to aggressively pay down high-interest debt. Divide that by your gross monthly income, your income before taxes. Multiply by 100. That is your savings rate. If you earn $5,500 per month gross and you put $550 into savings and investments, your savings rate is 10%. That's the entire calculation. One number, one formula. Here is why this single metric matters so much more than any budget category. The savings rate captures both sides of your financial equation simultaneously, your income and your spending, in one clean percentage. It doesn't care whether you bought coffee every day or none. It doesn't care whether your grocery bill was $300 or $500. It only cares about what fraction of what you earn is being converted into assets. And that fraction, compounded over time, is what determines when you achieve financial stability, when you have a real buffer against the unexpected, and ultimately when you have meaningful choices about how you spend your time. Let's make the difference concrete. 2 people, same $65,000 annual income. Person A saves 5%, about $270 per month. Person B saves 20%, about $1,080 per month. After 10 years, assuming a 7% average annual return on investments, Person A has roughly $46,000 in accumulated assets. Person B has over $185,000. That is not a 4 times difference for a 4 times savings rate. It's more than 4 times because compounding widens the gap continuously. At 15 years, the difference is even more dramatic. At 20 years, Person B has built a materially different financial life. Same income, just a different number. The savings rate is special because of one critical property. It is the one financial variable that is entirely within your control right now. You cannot control your employer's pay decisions. You cannot control inflation. You cannot control what markets do next quarter. But you can decide, this month, what percentage of your income becomes an asset instead of an expense. That is your lever. What most people don't realize until they see the math is just how nonlinear the relationship actually is. The compound math most people never see. Let me walk through the numbers at different savings rates. Hold a specific baseline in mind, $63,000 a year, roughly the median household income for U.S. individuals aged 25 to 34 based on recent Bureau of Labor Statistics data. We'll use a 7% average annual investment return, a widely used post-inflation estimate for a diversified index fund portfolio held over long periods. No timing, no stock picking. Just consistent, automated investing into a broad market index. At a 5% savings rate, saving about $263 a month, it takes approximately 52 years to reach financial independence, defined here as having enough in invested assets to live off the returns. Start at 25, and you're looking at retirement at 77. At 10%, saving $525 a month, the timeline drops to roughly 42 years. Start at 25, retire at 67. That is a full decade earlier, from one change, doubling your savings rate. At 20%, saving $1,050 a month, you're looking at about 31 years. Retire at 56 if you start at 25. At 30%, roughly 24 years, retire at 49. Now, this is not a plan to retire at 49. Most people in this audience aren't aiming for that, and they don't need to be. But here is the structural insight embedded in those numbers. The relationship between savings rate and your financial timeline is nonlinear. It accelerates. Going from 5 to 10% saves you 10 years on the timeline. Going from 10 to 20% saves another 11 years. Going from 20 to 30% saves another 7 years. Each additional percentage point you add does more than the last one because it both increases what you're building and reduces the spending baseline you'd need to sustain. These numbers come from the framework established in the 1998 paper by Cooley, Hubbard, and Walls, commonly called the Trinity Study, and the savings rate versus financial independence timeline modeling that follows from that work. The 7% return assumption is conservative and widely cited. For shorter-term milestones, the math is just as striking. How long to reach $100,000 in invested assets on a $63,000 income? At 5% savings rate, roughly 17 years. At 10%, about 11 years. At 20%, roughly 6 years. The curve bends steeply as the rate climbs. Most people see these numbers and immediately raise the same objection. That's interesting in theory, but my housing costs alone are 45% of my take-home. The standard savings targets don't map to my actual cost structure. That objection is valid, and it's a direct indictment of the most commonly cited savings rule. Why the 50-30-20 rule is outdated. The 50-30-20 rule says to allocate 50% of after-tax income to needs, 30% to wants, and 20% to savings and debt repayment. It gets recommended by financial advisors, taught in personal finance courses, and endorsed by banks. For the cost structure of the late 1990s and early 2000s, it was a reasonable starting point. The problem is the cost environment has shifted substantially, and the rule hasn't adapted with it. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics Consumer Expenditure Survey, housing costs for households aged 25 to 34 now average between 40 and 50% of after-tax income across most U.S. urban markets. In higher-cost cities, New York, Los Angeles, Seattle, San Francisco, Chicago, Washington, D.C., that figure runs higher. Add transportation at 15 to 17% and food at 12 to 14%, and basic fixed costs have already consumed 70 to 80% of take-home pay before a single discretionary dollar is spent. The math on 50-30-20 simply doesn't fit. When people try to follow a rule that structurally doesn't fit their reality, two things happen consistently. First, they feel like failures when they can't hit the 20% savings target, not because they're undisciplined, but because the cost structure they're operating in makes that target structurally out of reach without a meaningful income increase. Second, they abandon the entire framework, because if the savings goal is impossible, why track anything at all? The savings rate framework escapes this trap because it does not start with a predetermined target that may or may not apply to your situation. It starts with an honest measurement of where you actually are. Whether that's 2% or 12%, the framework says the same thing. Measure it accurately, add a small increment, let that increment become automatic, then raise again. There is no built-in shame trigger for being below an arbitrary benchmark designed for a cost environment that no longer exists for most of this audience. But here's the thing. Even people who understand all of this still fail to save consistently. The information isn't the bottleneck. Something deeper is at work. Why you keep failing, the behavioral science. It is not a willpower problem. This is the single most important thing to understand about savings behavior. And it's the reason most financial plans collapse even among people who genuinely want to follow them. In 2004, behavioral economists Shlomo Benartzi and Richard Thaler published research on a program called Save More Tomorrow, the SMART program. The experiment ran at a mid-size company. Instead of asking employees to save more right now, which activates resistance, they asked employees to pre-commit to directing a portion of future pay, raises into retirement savings before those raises ever hit their checking accounts. The employees would never have to reduce current spending. They simply agreed to let future income increases be automatically routed to savings first. The results were striking. Over 4 years, participants increased their savings rates by 3 to 4 percentage points per year, without using willpower, without tracking spending categories, without feeling financially constrained. The median savings rate in the program rose from under 4% to over 13%. Why does this work so consistently? Two cognitive biases are at play. The first is present bias. Our strong hardwired preference for what's available right now over what might be better for us later. When saving requires an active daily decision to move money out of your account, present bias wins almost every time. But when saving is automatic, present bias never gets activated. The decision was made in the past, and the system runs without you. The second is loss aversion. We feel losses roughly twice as powerfully as equivalent gains. Watching money leave your checking account on payday registers psychologically as a loss. Even when you rationally understand, it's going somewhere better. The SMART approach sidesteps loss aversion entirely because the future raise never enters your mental current balance to begin with, so the redirection never feels like a loss. The takeaway is architectural. The saving system that actually works is not the one that demands the most discipline. It's the one that requires the least. The ideal system removes the decision entirely and runs automatically. Which means the question isn't, how do I motivate myself to save more? The question is, how do I build this so I never have to think about it again? The answer is a specific setup, and it's simpler to build than most people expect. Pay yourself first. The right way to implement it. Here is the concrete mechanics of a savings system that works with your cognitive defaults instead of against them. It goes by a name you've probably heard, but may have never actually implemented: paying yourself first. The principle is that savings leave your account on payday, before you've spent anything, before the money becomes part of your mental available balance. Step 1. Open a dedicated savings or investment account, ideally at a different financial institution from your main checking account. The friction of having to log into a different bank or app is useful. It creates a small speed bump between you and that money, which protects it from impulsive withdrawals in moments of stress or temptation. This account has no linked debit card. You do not check it daily. Its purpose is to receive the automatic transfer and to grow. Step 2. Set up an automatic transfer that fires on the same day as your paycheck. If your pay dates are the 1st and the 15th, the transfer runs on the 1st and the 15th. The money moves before you've mentally incorporated it into your spendable balance. You are not saving what is left over at the end of the month. What is left after the transfer is your spending money. Step 3. Start with a number so small you genuinely will not notice it. If you have never saved consistently before, start with $50 or 1% of your paycheck. That sounds too small to matter. It isn't, because what you are building in the first 60 days is not the amount. It's the habit of the automatic transfer, the groove of a system working reliably. A $50 automatic transfer that runs without fail for 6 months builds something a $500 manual transfer you remember to do sometimes does not. Common objection: I'll overdraft. If your budget is tight enough that a $50 automatic transfer risks an overdraft, then $50 is still the right starting amount. You will not notice it. You will not disrupt your spending. You will not blow up anything over $50. And next month, you raise it. The implementation is a one-time, 20-minute setup. Once it's running, the system operates without you. But the pace at which you raise the rate matters, because most people either push too hard, too fast and collapse, or stay too low too long and lose momentum. The savings rate ladder. Climbing without falling off. The all-or-nothing approach to savings is one of the most reliable failure patterns in personal finance. Deciding that you're going to save 20% starting this month sounds decisive. It also produces lifestyle shock, especially if you've been saving very little. That leads to reversal within 60 days, which leads to abandonment, which leads to the familiar story that you're just not someone who can stick to a financial plan. Behavioral psychologist B.J. Fogg, in his research on habit formation, documented what he calls the minimum viable behavior, the smallest version of a desired habit that still registers as genuine progress and still builds the underlying pattern. For savings, the minimum viable increase is 1 to 2 percentage points. Small enough to be nearly invisible in your day-to-day spending, large enough to be real movement. The latter method. First, calculate your current savings rate accurately, and we'll cover exactly how to do that in a later chapter. Second, add 1 to 2 percentage points. If you're at 5%, go to 6 or 7%. Third, lock that level in and leave it untouched for 60 to 90 days. Let the new amount become automatic. Let your lifestyle adjust without you consciously managing it. Then raise again. Here's why this adds up to something significant. If you raise your savings rate by 1 percentage point per month for 12 months, you start the year at 5% and end at 17%. You will almost certainly not feel any single transition because each step was imperceptible. Your lifestyle absorbs each increment before the next one arrives. By the end of the year, you are saving 17% of gross income, which on most incomes is transformational, and no single step felt like a sacrifice. The math on incremental compounding: 1 percentage point on a $63,000 income is about $52 per month. 12 months of 1-point monthly raises means approximately $624 more per month going to savings by December, on top of what you were already saving. The savings rate ladder is not interesting to describe. It doesn't feel like a transformation while you're in it. That is exactly why it works. The resistance is too small to sustain. The system for climbing the ladder is simple, but what you do with the money once it leaves your checking account matters just as much as the rate itself. What to do with the money once you have it? A rising savings rate is only as useful as what you do with the money once it leaves your checking account. Cash sitting in a standard savings account or left in a checking account loses real purchasing power every year to inflation. In 2024, the average interest rate on a consumer savings account was under 0.5%, while inflation averaged over 3%. Keeping money in a standard savings account is not a conservative, safe choice. It is a guaranteed, slow, invisible loss. Here is a clear allocation hierarchy, ordered by where you get the most certain return per dollar, not by complexity. First priority, pay down high-interest consumer debt. Specifically, anything with an interest rate above 6 to 7%. A credit card charging 22% is a guaranteed 22% return on every dollar you put toward it. No investment reliably matches that, and there's zero market risk involved. If you carry high-interest debt, clearing it is the highest return action available to you. Second priority, build a 2-month liquid buffer in a high-yield savings account. Not 6 months, 2 months. Behavioral research consistently shows that larger emergency fund targets create paralysis. People delay starting because the goal feels distant, and many never reach it. 2 months of essential expenses is concrete, achievable, and covers the vast majority of actual emergencies. As of 2025, many online banks offer 4 to 5% on high-yield savings accounts, which is meaningfully better than a standard checking account. Third priority, capture your employer's retirement match. If your employer matches 401k contributions up to 3% of salary, and you're not contributing at least that 3%, you are leaving a 50 to 100% guaranteed return on the table. This is free money by definition. It is always priority 3. Fourth priority, tax-advantaged accounts, Roth IRA, traditional IRA, 401k contributions beyond the match. The tax treatment of these accounts adds to your effective return above what a taxable account delivers. Fifth priority, a broad market index fund in a taxable investment account. No individual stocks, no sector bets, no timing the market, a diversified index fund and time. This hierarchy applies to overwhelming majority of people in their 20s and 30s. Work through these 5 priorities in order, and you're capturing most of the available long-run return. There is one habit, though, that will quietly undo all of this progress if you don't actively account for it. The lifestyle inflation trap. Every raise, every bonus, every step up in income carries a force pulling your spending up to match it. It's called lifestyle inflation, and it's driven by a cognitive pattern called hedonic adaptation, the documented human tendency to normalize any new circumstance within weeks. The better apartment stops feeling like an improvement after a month and just becomes home. The nicer car is exciting for 2 weeks, and then it's just the car. Each new baseline feels permanent, and the next income increase is already mentally earmarked for the next upgrade. The social dimension intensifies this. In your 20s and 30s, a significant portion of spending is anchored to your peer group. The restaurant where colleagues go after work, the neighborhood where people in your industry tend to live, the trip to the group celebration that isn't really optional. These are real social costs. The financial consequence is that your savings rate can stay flat as your income grows, which means the compound math never accelerates, even as your earning power does. The countermeasure is structural, not motivational. It's the raise-split rule. The moment a raise lands, before you've mentally incorporated it into your baseline spending, you automatically redirect 50% of the net increase to savings. The other 50% is yours to spend. No restrictions, no guilt. You earned the lifestyle improvement. The raise split just ensures the savings rate moves up alongside it. Here is what this looks like in numbers. A $5,000 annual net raise, split 50-50, sends $2,500 per year, about $208 per month, to savings. Over 20 years at 7% annual return, that $208 per month compounds to over $108,000 in additional assets from one raise. Apply the rule to every raise and meaningful income increase over a 15-year career, and the compounded effect reshapes the timeline. And because you got a real lifestyle improvement from each raise, the 50% you kept, the I never get to enjoy my income growth, resistance never builds. The raise split rule is straightforward to follow when your finances are your own. It gets harder when another person's habits, spending defaults, and social pressures are also part of the picture. Shared finances, couples, roommates, and the savings rate. Two people sharing a financial life can either amplify the momentum of a savings rate strategy or completely neutralize it. The difference usually comes down to whether money conversations happen proactively, as brief routine check-ins between equals, or reactively, as confrontations after something has already gone sideways. The social dynamics in shared financial environments deserve acknowledgement. Nobody wants to be the person who vetoes every dinner suggestion, flags every spontaneous purchase, or turns a casual plan into a financial negotiation. The anxiety of feeling like the budget police corrodes trust and builds resentment on both sides. Any financial system that works in a shared environment has to protect individual autonomy, not eliminate it. A structure that works in shared environments operates on three principles. First, align on a household savings rate target, not a budget, a savings rate. If the household earns $120,000 combined and the shared target is 15%, that's $18,000 per year going to savings and investments across all accounts. How each person individually spends their discretionary portion is not the metric. The one number you track together. Did we hit the savings rate this month? Second, maintain separate discretionary accounts alongside the shared account. After fixed household expenses are covered and the shared savings target is met, each person has their own spending account. No committee approval needed for how that money gets used. Individual autonomy is preserved, which removes most of the resentment that builds when every purchase feels like a joint decision. Third, have a monthly money conversation that takes 5 minutes. One question: what was the household savings rate this month? If it was at or above target, done. If it was below, what changed? And does anything need adjusting next month? This is a factual exchange, not an evaluation. The goal is accurate measurement and small corrections, not blame. This framework sidesteps most of the emotional friction in shared financial conversations because the metric is simple, the autonomy is protected, and the check-in is brief. The harder version of the money conversation is almost always caused by a lack of structure, not a lack of goodwill. The thing that consistently derails even well-structured systems, though, is that most people don't actually know their real number. Running the audit, your real number right now. Most people who think they know their savings rate are working from an estimate that's off by several percentage points in one direction or the other. They either overstate it by counting things that aren't really savings, or understate it by missing income sources or employer contributions they don't see directly. An inaccurate rate gives you a false baseline and misleads the entire ladder strategy. Here is how to calculate it correctly. For income, use gross before taxes. Add every source: salary, freelance income, rental income, any bonus received this month. Do not subtract taxes. Using gross income makes your rate consistent with the research on savings rates and financial independence timelines, and makes comparisons across different tax situations meaningful. For savings and investments, add every dollar that went into a dedicated account that is not for immediate spending, your 401k contribution. Your employer's matching contribution, because it is genuinely accumulating in your wealth. Any Roth or traditional IRA contribution. The automatic transfer to your separate savings account. Do not include minimum debt payments in this figure, unless you are aggressively paying down high-interest debt. Minimums are the cost of carrying the debt, not savings. Divide total savings and investments by gross income. Multiply by 100. The most common errors. Omitting the employer 401k match, which can add 2 to 3 percentage points most people don't realize they're getting. Counting credit card minimum payments as savings. Using take-home pay as the denominator, which overstates the apparent rate. Whatever number you get, own it without judgment. A 3% rate is the real starting point for the latter, not a verdict. A 12% rate is meaningful progress on the compound curve. The only savings rate that doesn't help you is a fictitious one. Run this audit once a month. Set a recurring reminder for the same day each month. It takes under 5 minutes. One number, one calculation, 12 times a year. That monthly check is the entire ongoing management cost of this system. Once you have an accurate number and a working system, the last piece is a concrete picture of where the ladder is taking you. The 5-year savings rate game plan. Here is a concrete year-by-year roadmap for someone starting at a 5 to 8% savings rate today. These are specific actions and targets for each year of the plan. Year 1. Automate to 10%. Set up the automatic transfer to a separate account at a different institution. No linked debit card, firing on payday. Let it run for 12 months without adjusting it. The goal of year 1 is not the specific number. It's proving the system works. You are demonstrating to yourself that the transfer runs without your active involvement, that your lifestyle absorbed the change, and that the habit is real. Run the monthly audit. Don't change anything else. Year 2. Apply the raise split rule to every income increase that arrives. Any raise, any bonus, any new recurring revenue, 50% goes automatically to savings before you update your spending. By the end of year 2, most people following this framework land in the 13 to 16% range. Review the debt hierarchy. Anything above 7% interest should be addressed or being actively paid down. Year 3. Audit your 2 highest recurring cost categories. Not all of them, just 2. Where is the most spending going relative to the value actually received? 1 or 2 targeted reductions, each redirected to savings, typically add 2 to 4 percentage points without changes that feel meaningful day to day. Year 4. Target 18 to 20%. By this point, the savings habit is deep, the system is automatic, and the investment account has grown to a number that feels real, which itself becomes motivating. Review investment allocation. Are savings reaching tax-advantaged accounts before taxable ones? If not, shift the flow. Year 5. You are at or above 20%. Run the compound math on your actual current balance and your current savings rate. Calculate the real timeline to your specific financial milestone, whether that is a house down payment, a fund that gives you freedom to make a career change, or a genuine financial independence number. You now have a concrete, mathematically grounded picture of when you get there. Here is the reframe to take away from this episode. The savings rate is the one financial lever that is entirely within your control right now. Not the job market, not inflation, not interest rates, not your employer's pay decisions. The percentage of what you earn that becomes an asset instead of an expense that is yours to set, to raise, and to compound year after year. You don't need perfect discipline. You don't need a high income. You don't need to time markets or pick the right stocks. You need one number, a system that moves it automatically, and the patience to let the math work. Bringing it all together. Let's close with the full picture. Chapter 1. Traditional budgeting fails most people in their 20s and 30s because it was designed for a cost structure that no longer fits and requires perfect execution to produce any result, which means one bad week takes the whole system down. Chapter 2. The savings rate. Saved and invested divided by gross income captures your entire financial equation in one number and directly predicts your financial future. Chapter 3. The compound math is nonlinear. Moving from 5 to 20% savings rate doesn't just increase your monthly savings amount. It can cut a decade or more off your financial timeline, because each percentage point does more than the last. Chapter 4. The 50-30-20 rule doesn't fit today's cost structure. A savings rate approach starts from your actual current number, instead of demanding a target that housing cost alone makes structurally unreachable for most people. Chapter 5. Present bias and loss aversion aren't character flaws. They're predictable cognitive patterns. The SMRT research showed that automating savings removes the active decision entirely, which is why it consistently works where willpower-based approaches don't. Chapter 6. Pay yourself first on payday. Automatic transfer, separate account, start with an amount so small you won't notice the change. Chapter 7. The savings rate ladder, 1 to 2 percentage points at a time, held for 60 to 90 days before the next raise, lets you reach 17 or 18% without any single step feeling like a sacrifice. Chapter 8. The allocation hierarchy for saved money. High interest debt first, 2-month liquid buffer, employer match, tax-advantaged accounts, then index funds. Chapter 9. The raise split rule. 50% of every net income increase automatically to savings before you adjust any lifestyle spending. Stops lifestyle inflation before it starts. Chapter 10. Shared financial environments work best with a household savings rate target, separate discretionary accounts, and a 5-minute monthly check-in that's factual, not evaluative. Chapter 11. The real audit, gross income as the denominator. Employer match counted, minimum payments excluded. Run once a month, 5 minutes, one number. Chapter 12. The 5-year plan. Automate to 10% in year 1. Apply the raise split rule in year 2. Audit 1 or 2 costs in year 3. Target 18 to 20% by year 4. Run the compound math on your real timeline in year 5. The number that decides your financial future is not your income. It's not your credit score. It's not even your investment returns. It is the percentage of what you earn that you consistently convert into assets. That number is yours to set right now. If this episode gave you a clearer picture of how to build toward financial stability, subscribe. There's a new episode every week on the habits, systems, and decisions that actually move the needle.